And I see all the central banks pulling home their gold, requesting it home from Paris and from New York. I see money being yanked off of or gold and silver being yanked off the COMEX. I see record delivery standing on the COMEX. Every month we're pulling off as much as we used to in years by high net worth individuals, by family offices, and by sovereign wealth funds. I see the big money preparing.
Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. On a sunny day in New Jersey, I traveled on my silver tour up to Minnesota for Silverfest and to also see the James Bond of the silver world, Andy Schectman, and he is joining us here today for, I know we had a couple of weeks off following Silverfest. Well, Andy, I don't know if I got really, I wouldn't call it rest, but starting to organize things and get a little more manageable. So it's great to have you back here for our weekly silver and gold market update, which we will make weekly again on Saturday night. And thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Chris, it's so good to hear your voice. I got to tell you, I miss seeing your face. It was great to have a buddy to hang out with while you were up here in town. And while I'm glad you made it safe back to New Jersey, I'll miss seeing you here every day while up in Minneapolis. I hope you make it back on your travels someday soon. But I'm glad to be back, and thanks for having me, buddy.
Well, I appreciate that. It was great to see you, and I think we did some cool things that, I don't know, over the weeks, but let alone months and years, will be of benefit to the silver industry, and good things for Miles Franklin. And I think I know what you mean where, you know, and that's what was nice about Silverfest for me, and I think a lot of other people have expressed this, where just being able to talk to people who see the same reality as you. I'm not saying that, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm completely nuts and I have some blind spot I can't see, but I don't know. If that's the case, then at least I can hang out at your house and, you know, be around other people who are seeing that same thing. And I think that's what people enjoyed and perhaps what you're touching on there as well.
Definitely is, Chris. I mean, I've owned a precious metals company since 1990, and it's like light on, light off, switch on, switch off when I'm working and talking to people all day long, or people like you. When I'm not doing that, it's the conversations here amongst my peers and my friends is few and far between, as that, you know, most people don't see things the way that we do. And a lot of that has to do not with really because it's we're seeing things so radically. It's just that there are two things. Number one, the message that you and I are talking about and listening to and thinking about is one that comes with a reality that isn't always fun to live. When you talk about the sky falling, or the dollar falling, or the economy looking bleak, or whatever the picture you paint is, that's what comes with owning precious metals. At least that's the image that is painted in so many people's minds. And that's why I often like to talk to people about owning precious metals as wealth, not as an insurance policy against the catastrophes that are lurking. And you're right, it is nice to be able to talk to someone like you face-to-face, a buddy, about reality, about what's happening, and not just trying to help people at work, but trying to talk to someone and formulate ideas. And, you know, that was what I'll miss so much about you being there, was the ability just to talk with someone face-to-face about all these things and formulate some new ideas, which I did thanks to you, and we're really excited to implement a lot of those. So thanks for that discussion and for helping us find some pretty neat ideas.
Well, that's kind of you to say that. And actually, Andy, it's actually interesting along those lines of being able to discuss things like that. We're only about 11 months away from Silverfest 2021. Did you realize that? I
guess I haven't stopped to realize that, Chris, but it would be nice if 11 months from now we can all meet in person instead of virtually. That would be very cool. Have a place in mind for
Come on, homie. You know Silver
2021?
Chris is on that. You know I'm going to find us a place in person. I'm not sure if Silver Cruise in February is going to be rushing things too much, but who knows? Maybe all of the perfect people to help put that together will make it happen. But yeah, you know, it's certainly, and we will get to silver in a second. First, I know you noticed you mentioned, used the word catastrophe, and I was wondering if that meant that you watched the debate last night. But has been interesting traveling from first to Denver up to Minnesota, now in New Jersey, and seeing the different way the states have responded to COVID. Also changing my opinion about it a bit, where again, I think it's safe to say that assuming everything the government is telling us about it is probably not the way to go, although just interesting. Seems like a lot of people have been affected here in New York, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully reported numbers, any derivatives thereof come down, and you know, interesting world that we are living in. But Andy, I guess to dig in, why don't you start with, in the last month or so, giving us, you know, I know you were at Silverfest, but an update of what you're seeing on the physical level with everything that's going on. Again, we have the election coming up in a couple of weeks, and I'm curious what people are doing on a physical level with their metals.
You know, Chris, one of the things that's always surprised me about the American public is how short their memory is. And, you know, there's an event, it happens, it ends, and people move on to the next thing. Even against a backdrop of a pandemic, where you would think people's minds would be more singularly focused after such a traumatic 9 months that we've all faced. But they're not. And I guess what I mean by that is, in March, we couldn't answer the phone and write up orders fast enough. And within a few weeks of that happening, both the Canadian Mint first and then the United States Mint subsequently shut down due to COVID restrictions. The supply chain, which we've talked about all year, that started with mine foreclosures in excess of 65% of all of the mines across the globe, refineries closing throughout all of Europe, most of them bordering Italy, and mints closing, gumming up a supply chain. So within a few weeks of all of that happening, there was no product to be found. And people would say to me, geez, I knew I should have done this. I should have been doing it last year. You know, I'm mad at myself. I'll buy whatever I can. I'll wait as long as I have to. And there were delivery delays, and there were high premiums. And by April, we were seeing $10, $11 an ounce premium on silver eagles, with the spot price not much higher than the premium, almost 100% premium on silver eagles, and maybe 90% premium on all other 1 ounce silver coins. The demand was vastly outpacing the supply, and the realization of being prepared was important, and it was hitting home. And even for me, someone who's accumulated precious metals for a very long time as wealth, realized the significance of having your life raft blown up, if you will, before the boat starts to go down. Now, at the beginning of this conversation, I talked about that is part of the problem with talking to people about precious metals, is that side of thing. You know, the Asians, and I think almost all of the Asian cultures, the Koreans, the Chinese, and the Japanese, all have a word. The word is pronounced different, but I believe the character is almost identical. Jim Rogers told me this. And the word is synonymous, catastrophe and opportunity. It means the same thing to them. Yeah, there are catastrophes lurking. There are also prepare and maybe even to do very well. And I think people lose sight of the they lose sight because all of a sudden summer came, the price came down a little bit, the economy started to gradually open a little bit, and people forgot about maybe the second wave, maybe about the election, maybe about what's coming, the unknown, maybe about the sad state of the economy. I look from the periphery and I see all the central banks pulling home their gold, requesting it home from Paris and from New York. I see money being yanked off of or gold and silver being yanked off the COMEX. I see record delivery standing on the COMEX. Every month we're pulling off as much as we used to in years by high net worth individuals, by family offices, and by sovereign wealth funds. I see the big money preparing, and I see everyone in this country sitting idle again. Don't get me wrong, our business is still 3-4x from what it normally was in 2017, 18, and 19. But right now, I think people are taking for granted what could be coming right around the corner. And availability is as good as I've seen all year. Premiums are as low as I've seen all year. And I think that this last pullback, which is very interesting, I want to mention something in a moment about that, just further anesthetized people. They're sleeping and not realizing that they should be battening up the hatches again as we roll around towards the election, which is as pivotal a moment, in my opinion, as anything I've seen in my lifetime. And so no matter how this plays out, we are in for, I think, bumpy times ahead. And so right now, Chris, the bottom line, and I'm sorry to answer it in such a long-winded fashion, I'm surprised at how calm and docile the market is right now. Premiums are low, product is available, and I think the backdrop would suggest the opposite. This last pullback, by the way, if you go back and look at a chart, the first week in October, which in China is called the Golden Week, I believe. You go back to 2013 or 14 and look at the first 7 to 10 days in the month of October. The Chinese are really not at work. It's a celebration in China. And every year when they're not there to man the markets, they knock the hell out of the price of gold and silver the first week in October. Almost every single year. We've written about this before. I guess what I'm trying to simply say is this. The movements of the market right now, Chris, in my opinion, are noise. And I think that people should view what we see right now as a heck of a buying opportunity if you're looking to add to your position. The availability and the price above melt value is as good as I've seen it since 2019. And so no matter what happens with the election, no matter what happens with the future, I think you could make an argument that having a position in silver right now is as important as it's ever been. And the supply and the price is as good as it's been in the past almost 10 months. So strong demand still, nothing like it was in the first quarter. And I think people are taking for granted a market that still has a very, very, very fragile supply chain. So it won't take but much, a little bit of demand or another event to find what I would think would be the defining characteristic of this market moving forward, and that will be a difficult time securing product in a marketplace that has a very fragile supply chain.
Well, I hear you, and fortunately I figured it out. You want to know what I figured out?
What did you figure out?
Did you watch the debate last night? Or we're recording Thursday, so that would be Wednesday night. I believe there was another debate last night.
I did watch it, as a matter of fact.
Okay, great. Oh, this is perfect because I skipped it. But can you recap for me briefly when the moderator asked all of the candidates about their deficit reduction plans and how they're going to address the debt, and whether they think it's wise that a group known as the Federal Reserve, ironically owned by the same banks that melt down the market, and then through a shadow Enronish company called the Federal Reserve, then they just print fresh money, give it back to themselves, then complain if the government does not authorize further trillions of dollars of stimulus, which now looks like Jerome Powell, I don't know, would that be safe to say, stiff-arming the government? I mean, saying we face tragic risks if more money is not printed for Corona, and I'm trying to be careful. I'm not trying to belittle that. And I mean, maybe if the money actually went to the people that were being affected would be one thing, but it sure felt like the typical bank stimulus. So anyway, sorry for getting off track there, but can you recap for me how what their plans were for deficit reduction and all that other stuff? I'm sure that was talked about.
Yeah. Of course, no, they don't speak about that. They talk about everything but that, climate change being far higher up on their priority list than the health of the economy and the currency. But there is a bill right now that is being proposed in front of Congress that would allow Jerome Powell to wave his wand and actually get the money into the people's hands. And this is a big deal. In fact, this might be...
Andy, sorry to interrupt. I want to make sure I'm clear here. So there's a bill to suggest like getting the money directly in the banker's hands, kind of like cash delivery or like a digital keystroke, so that the same banks that keep popping up year after year, decade after decade, manipulating markets. So, for example, that J.P. Morgan has to pay $920 million, so we're going to make sure to get more cash in their hand, which, as Pam and Russ Martin from Wall Street on Parade have detailed quite eloquently, how the banks keep receiving this cash. Is that what that bill is about? I just wanted to be clear.
No, it's not. And I love the Martins. They write. Their writing is one in this industry. No, in fact, what it is, it's usurping those banks. You see, that's what the problem is. When the Federal Reserve buys bonds from the member banks, from the big banks that have the bonds, that money does not go to the public or does not go to the banks to disseminate. Or actually, let me put it to you this way. It goes into a reserve account at a member Federal Reserve Bank for them to lend against, which is the creation of money in and of itself. But the banks aren't lending. And so the bill that is in front of Congress right now would create pass-through wallets to every man, woman, and child, me and you included. And those pass-through wallets would be money that would be given directly from the Federal Reserve. See, the Federal Reserve is more or less just a clearinghouse. They cannot create inflation until the money is lent into existence. But now the bill says, well, you know what? We need to get the money into the public's hands, not into the banks, who then just lend it to their buddies who have huge balance sheets in the hedge funds that further inflate asset prices, further enriching the rich. Instead, what they're talking about is creating a bypass flow through to the public, everyone having a digital wallet. And if that happens, now you sow the seeds for wicked, massive inflation right away. And also getting that money into the public's hands right away.
So,
if that happens, it's a yes, well, I mean, cement. Let's put it that way.
And
if that happens, yes, and it's a massive game changer for precious metals if that happens. You're talking, for the first time, really, big inflation in a millisecond, as the Fed can now deposit money directly into everyone's flow-through Fed wallet.
Well, I get what's going on here. I mean, you could have just asked, but clearly you're saying you want to have a meeting later because you realize we need to get the Silver Chopper Ben figurines of Ben Bernanke throwing $100 bills out of a helicopter. Fortunately, I do have an artist on that. He's perhaps not the most prompt artist, but a brilliant man in his own right. And 4 different silver makers, or whatever you call it, that say they can actually turn ounces of silver into, a paperweight style, real life replication of really what you're describing there, Andy. So that's the good news. Although you're kind of getting into the Eastern mysticism today, which of course, I'm sign me up. And am I going to go out on a limb and assume that maybe you've been reading that Sun Tzu Art of War book that I gave you a copy of on my way up there? So I'm curious if you could explain what Sun Tzu would feel in response to watching the debate and then connecting that with the silver market. How do you think he would respond to the totality of that?
Well, I think he would basically say that the candidates are all misdirecting us from the real facts, misdirecting from the real problems. And really that's what the whole concept of the art of war is misdirection and beating your opponent without throwing a punch, keeping the price of monetary metals held down to make your currency seem stronger than it really is, deflect and not talk about the fact that we are running a deficit this year that will amount to roughly the value of half of the gold ever mined since the beginning of time. I mean, you're talking about things that are the important things are not being talked about. Instead, it's divisiveness, bitterness. It's good, fodder to watch TV. It's like watching a drive-by, kind of like driving by an accident and all. But no, I think people protecting themselves with gold and silver right now, Chris, I look at it as a very noble endeavor, the things that you're doing and things that I'm trying to do. And we make a living selling precious metals, and you try to make a living talking about the virtues of silver. I get all of that. By the same token, if someone dropped $100 million in my pocket, I have no damn clue where I'd put it other than gold and silver. I find the picture to be very confusing, very frightening, and the politicians are ignoring the biggest problem of all. They're ignoring the giant iceberg that's floating just under the surface just ahead and focusing on things that are misleading and misdirecting the public from focusing on what really should be happening and what really we should be focusing on. A politician who tells the truth and makes the hard decisions and sends us down a path that will be very difficult to take, but will be much more difficult to take when Mother Nature has her way with us before it's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me, and at least one way that I like to think about it is would you invest, let's say you have a stock portfolio, right? And you look at 10 companies and you go to a presentation with the management and, one seems like a disaster. They can't even find their notes. The next one, guy sounds really together. You're like, wow. Then third one you go to seems like, whoa, this guy's got his shit together. I don't even know what he does, but I would trust him. Kind of like you get a feel for these things. So let's say you get through 4 where there is Trump, Pelosi, Bush, Obama, Reagan, Coolidge. We'll throw Hoover in there too with some of his incredible policies where you just see them like fumbling the football all over the field. Would you invest in that company? And a tag-along question to that, it's like I see silver as really it's like the best way I've been able to find to short government. And by the way, Yara, if you're listening, we need those bumper stickers. Yeah. Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that you'd be a fool to invest in a company like that, or or a company that is, $120 trillion in debt, company that is running continual massive deficits, and trying to print corporate bonds to continue to finance their reckless endeavors. So, that's really the point. And when we talk about places to put our money, well, you got a stock market as overvalued as anything I've ever seen in any market that really has ever been. You have a bond market that's all but dead and buried. You have a real estate market that, again, is super overvalued. But again, no one's making any loans anyway, so the banks aren't lending. And so getting a mortgage nowadays is as hard as it's ever been in the last decade. If you look at the bank participation of lending and also in giving mortgages, they've fallen off a cliff. So investments right now are, there's nowhere to safely put your money except for precious metals. And I say that with 100% objectivity. I don't know. I guess you could make an argument farmland and cryptocurrencies might be a place to put it. But when we talk about cryptocurrencies as an alternative, when we talk about cryptocurrencies and farmland, if we build a pyramid, the Swiss have envisioned or have used a financial model in the shape of a pyramid for 300 years, where the base of our pyramid grows with age, basically. The base of the pyramid would be things like physical precious metals and farmland, where the cryptocurrencies are up at the top 10% of the pyramid, something far more speculative and far more rewarding if it hits. So, while they are related, they shouldn't be put into the same category. I think everyone should own some cryptocurrencies, and if the ability to own farmland or agricultural ETFs, that's not a bad idea also. But short of that, where do you put your money, Chris, with safety and the potential for upside potential? And I think that's what you get with silver: safety, anonymity, upside potential, and history as a metal that's lived through every pandemic and every world war and every catastrophe. And like I said, from catastrophe breeds opportunity. And I think there is opportunity to be found, great opportunity in silver. And I say that with objectivity. I try my hardest to think of reasons why that's not the case. And show me an asset class other than commodities, really, that hasn't reached, for the most part, its all-time high. And commodities, there still is room to grow. And I learned from one of our last talks, sugar being maybe the most undervalued of them all. But short of that, silver's got to be right up there amongst the most undervalued assets on the planet. So I think I think this is the time to, even if you're not preparing for the catastrophe, if you're just looking for opportunity, you'll find it in silver.
Well, Andy, while completely acknowledging perhaps the complete uselessness of what I or anybody wants or thinks the price should do, with that said, should people want the price of silver to go up or down? Your client, should want the price of silver to go up or down right now?
That's actually one of the best questions you've ever asked me. I'll tell you that our business is exponentially stronger when the price goes down because of people like you who have educated people, masses, into what's happening and why silver is such a good value. Ultimately, you want it to go up, but be careful what you wish for, because with massively increasing silver comes a realization of a dollar that's dying or dead and an economic system that is crumbling. E.B. Tucker, in an interview he just gave with Daniela Cambona, was talking about $40 silver by Christmas. And he just gave this the other day, and he was very convinced of it. That would be great. But again, you're talking an environment that begins to rapidly deteriorate to give us $40 plus prices in silver. So ultimately, I think if you own something, you want it to go higher in price. But like I said, and I think this is kind of what you're edging for, be careful what you wish for, because with that comes some consequences of silver expressing itself in dollar terms.
Well, if I may offer a retort.
Please.
So, I know Bill Holter talked about this similar at Silverfest, and I'll put my answer in two buckets. One, as someone who, various points in the last decade, had money saved but no regular income coming in, and that money was saved in silver mining stocks or options thereof. I've certainly had a lot of days where I was like, come on, $50 silver, versus not being as thrilled when instead we got a $3 or $4 mysterious spoof in the price. Now on the other hand, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Once getting things together, it's like, I don't know, there's part of me, I guess the bigger part of me would just like some justice in the world in like a fairly trading market. I mean, we see these, $920 million settlement, and it seems like the same. Andy, if you can hit the mute button for a second there until you're ready to go. I'm getting a little feedback from you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But, I mean, you have these fines, yet it appears that, so it's like I'd like to see the resolution to that more than anything. But, I mean, the point being, to the degree where, I don't know, someone has a business or you're working or you have income coming in and can keep buying an undervalued asset, I find there's part of me thinking like, gee, it'd be nice if this gives me a little more time. And again, factoring in that what I want but what I can do is shift. And I found what I've gotten better at over time is not having my emotions tied to what I hope silver will do, but twist that a little bit to say, what do I think it will do? How do I set things up along those lines in the best way possible? And to your second part there about, is that the world we want to live in? Again, I don't know. I'm not God, and, I'm just a guy who talks about silver. So, yet with that said, I mean, I did leave the U.S. once because I was very fearful of how this would unfold. That's why I left, lived in Europe for a year and a half back in 2013 and 14. So I certainly understand that, although thinking about it a bit more and hopefully being a little older and wiser, debatable, but, I mean, it's like if you sit there and you watch that debate last night, and you see they're firing off trillions at a pop, and you see one small fraction of the population accumulating and just taking, I mean, it's like they already was 99.9, now they're taking 99.9 of what's left. I don't know what that transition will be like, but certainly as I've learned more about, just that human instinct and how we work to deadlines. I've seen it in my own life. I'll bet everybody listening can find it in the examples in their life as well, and in fact, when I was in Europe, one of the places I went to was this town in Greece called Volos, which actually you can find this on YouTube probably still. If you type in Volos, VOLOS, and the TEM, this was when Greece was running into trouble back in 2012, 13, and 14. But they showed how, all right, they couldn't afford the euro, yet people came together in the public market. And one guy brought bread. Another one was teaching the kids how to dance and sing, and it was and I actually made a trip to stop there just to be there and see it, because I think that's what nature and human instinct does. I think a lot of what government does is based on fear and to prevent us from realizing the abilities that we do have. And, one last thing to add to that, I remember a lot of the Austrians, even back in 2009, 2010, some of the real old school scholars, I was surprised because I remember hearing them say, several of them, I don't remember exact name, but it was like, if you really let the free market function, the thing could have been healed in a year or two, even as severe as 2008 was, or even as severe as things could be now. So again, I look at what's happening last night, and you watch the debates for all the money that is going to these banks that, and then someone else probably knows the website with the bonus pools, but, all the military stuff, like the idea that, there's just, I remember reading an article, I think there's like 35,000 troops in Germany. I'm like, what on earth are we do? We're printing money, and why would they? It just is. So I don't know. I wonder if perhaps maybe on the other side of that, again, I don't know, but just I think there's a lot of good that can come out of it, and that's why we will continue to share what we're seeing and hearing. And I will give my oath on the air this morning, morning time in New Jersey right now. But I don't claim to have everything right, and I may have some blind spot I can't see. But the one thing I'll promise people is that I will always come on here and share my best opinion or knowledge or guess with integrity, and I wouldn't let anybody on the show who didn't do the same. And so, in the end, we'll see how that all unfolds. Although, Andy, with winter coming around the corner, I was hoping today you would have a silver special for people who do want silver rather than U.S. Treasuries. Oh, my God, think about that one day. Silver U.S. Treasury spread. So I was hoping you would have a special so hot that it would melt the snow. What do you got for me?
It's actually going to be 80 degrees here tomorrow in Minnesota, which is really strange, to be honest with you. But I do. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's because I have a special. The bags of $50, we have oodles of them. We have bought, I don't know, maybe over 100 bags of mixed $50 in fantastic condition. That was one of the things I was most shocked about when I saw what we bought, was the condition of the $50 themselves. They all look really, really nice. And so we are offering them to your listeners today for $2.09 above the price of silver on $50 bags. And of course, as always, Chris, a portion of all of those sales will go directly to Arcadia as our way of thanking you for what you're doing, helping you continue to do your work, which is very important. The quality of guests that you have on your show is second to none, which leads me to one point. And I was talking with my wife last night, and she made a comment, and we were talking about economics and the state of affairs, and she said, "Well, why don't we ever see any of this? How do you know you're right? Why don't we ever see any of this on the news?" And I chuckled for a moment and just realized that the things that, kind of to what you were saying about the debate, the topics, the things that are important are being misdirected, Sun Tzu style. We are being misdirected into things that are irrelevant, and watching the fodder and the bickering and the fighting and the name calling and talking about the climate, and not realizing that our currency and our economy is denigrating by the second. Bags of 90% U.S. constitutional $50 are as good of a buy as anything you can buy in this industry. They are functional, they are flexible, they are liquid, they are recognized. So, yeah, I love that. And so $2.09 over, Chris, on $50 bags. I have several hundred in stock ready to ship. And it's just great to be back on the show. I miss talking to you online, and I will look forward to our next conversation next week. In the meantime, enjoy your time out east and stay safe. And I know I'll talk to you in the next day or two anyway.
Yeah, well, that certainly is true, and thank you for that junk silver special. I know I have somewhere between Miles Franklin or our headquarters in Denver or wherever I'll be based tomorrow or the next. I have $1,000 worth of those Kennedy halves from last time. So, folks, I don't know if you happen to tweet this YouTube interview out, tag Miles Franklin and Arcadia Economics without the S. I don't know. Maybe I'll be firing some of those Kennedy halves your way, kind of like we did at Silverfest, which was a lot of fun. So, Andy, I thank you. And fortunately, I hear you're going to be hanging out a little bit at the New Orleans Investment Conference that is coming up next week, yeah?
Yeah, I'm going to drop in and say hi and mingle a little bit. I don't have a booth there this time, but I plan on lurking around and saying hi to people, and hopefully we'll be able to meet in the same booth.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, after it gets started and I figure it out a bit more, we do have a press pass there, so we'll find a time and I can announce it on the show when you'll be around, and if folks want to come and ask the man the questions in person, we can set that all up. I'm excited for it. I've always had a lot of fun there. 2 years I've been there now. So anyway, if you'd like to know more about that, well, Brian London was on the show the other day, and he's going to tell you about it right now.